morning, everyone. This is CGTN live in the city of Yichang, central China's Hubei province, and I am now in the Yangtze River releasing spots on this platform, and I'm proud doing this live streaming report on the release of critically endangered fishes of Chinese sturgeons, which will take place at around 9 o'clock here. This morning, 500 artificially bred Chinese sturgeons will be released to the Yangtze River here, as you can see. It's a rainy day today, and a little bit cold, but still the sight is quite beautiful. As you can this one is quite small because it's still quite young. But if you look the other Chinese sturgeons in this world, you notice some of them are quite big. Well, Chinese sturgeons are very ancient species in the world. It has a history of 140 million years.
每年春夏之交，中华鲟会从海洋洄游至长江中上游繁殖产卵，是典型的溯河洄游性鱼类。由于中华鲟生活史复杂，一生需要多次往复于海洋和长江，其种群资源量的急剧下降，受到近海饵料资源量、近海水环境、航运、沿江污染、捕捞、长江水文变化等多种因素的综合影响。 1988年，中华鲟被列为国家一级保护动物。2010年，列为世界自然联盟国际极危物种。中华鲟野生资源面临空前危机，保护中华鲟已迫在眉睫。中华鲟的保护工作真正始于上世纪80年代。 1982年，专业的珍稀鱼类科研机构中华鲟研究所成立。由于中华鲟个体大、性成熟迟、繁殖周期长，对繁殖的环境要求苛刻。30多年来，中华鲟研究保护工作在艰难中前行。1984年，利用鲟鱼脑垂体催产新鱼成功，并进行首次放流。 1985年，采用人工合成激素代替脑垂体催产获得成功。1995年，大规格中华鲟培育技术取得突破，幼苗成活率大幅度提高。1999年， 具备年放流中华鲟大规格幼苗5万尾能力。2000年，中华鲟活体和厂商采卵技术取得突破。2009年，世界上第1位全人工繁育的子2代中华鲟在三峡坝区基地破壳而出。继2011年，中华鲟子2代全人工繁殖连续获得成功。2013年，中华鲟雌核发育技术取得成功，实现单性生殖。2015年，中华鲟人工种群遗传谱系成功建立。经过30多年的研究与探索，中华鲟的物种保护已形成了一套完整的措施体系。其中，人工增殖放流成为最稳定有效的重要措施。从上世纪80年代起，中华鲟研究所已成功放流57次，累计放流多种规格中华鲟500多万尾，较好的补充和恢复了自然种群资源。中华鲟人工放流是一项严谨而复杂的工作。每年秋季，科研人员挑选健康成熟的中华鲟青鱼，开展催产繁殖，进行性向发育人工诱导调控，严格的遗传配对筛选。通过人工催产、采卵采精、人工酒精、孵化，将中华鲟幼苗精心培育到合适的放流规格。放流前1个月，科研人员挑选身体健康、摄食良好的中华鲟幼鱼，集中从事天然水源的饮水环境养殖，同时喂养马量也由人工配合饲料，也利于放流中华鲟回归长江能尽快适应天然水域环境。接下来，对放流中华鲟车辆进行种质鉴定和一并检疫，生物学体检测量，建立放流中华鲟档案。放流前2天，科研人员对放流鱼体质情况进行最后体检确认后，对放流鱼停驶2天，通过水车或抽氧包运至放流点实施放流。为便于对放流中华鲟跟踪监测和评估放流效果，科研人员对放流中华鲟进行标记工作。在不断创新和改进下，现主要采用3种标记方式 ：PIT 芯片标记、TY 梯形标记和声呐标记。3种标记互相结合，以便于科研人员对放流中华鲟进行识别和监测。其中 ，PIT 芯片标记可以长期保存，一般植入中华鲟背部肌肉内，是中华鲟永不丢失的身份证。TY 梯形标一般挂在中华鲟背鳍部，易于识别，方便放流后期监测回补以及反馈渔民录入信息。声呐标记一般通过外科手术缝合植入中华鲟腹腔内，在中华鲟洄游至大海的过程中，通过定时或实时发送声呐信号，以便于科研人员掌握放流中华鲟洄游时间、洄游距离及实时有关水文信息，从而对放流效果进行有效评价。从宜昌到长江口追踪的距离长达1800公里。监测期间，中华鲟研究所与世界自然基金会联合荆州、武汉、鄂州、安庆、铜陵、芜湖、南京、上海的志愿者们，共同展开了“守望家园，护航中华鲟”的研究嘉宾主题活动。通过形式多样的宣传活动，向公众传递人与长江和谐共生的生态理念。一幅幅人与鲟相知相伴的盛大场景在沿江城市出现，将2015年中华鲟放流打造成为跨长江流域的生态保护盛会。在这些先行者的带领下，越来越多的社会公众已自发参与到关爱中华鲟的行列中来。带了7、8个人上来了。中华鲟是不幸的，因为人类的不良活动导致其自然种群严重下降。中华鲟又是幸运的，因为人类的及时醒悟以及行之有效的保护措施，使中华鲟的种群得以。 喂，一。喂。喂。
因为刚才提到它在外表上，来你来。上去了。
And now as we move towards here, we see some working sites. Some populations for wolves.
因为有的嘉宾走就走啊。
喂。
They're preparing some towels for this release. Now let's ask them why. That is out. What are these towels for? 你好，我们是
你们待到就可以了。
我们是 CGTN 在做一个电视直播，我们想问一下，就是这些毛巾是用来做什么 ？What are those used for？因为今天下雨嘛，下雨的时候等下嘉宾，然后放牛的人员过来放牛的时候可以擦一下手。对，因为到时候可能现场会有一点乱嘛，怕他们会用其他的那个池子里的水去洗手，因为碰到鱼了以后，给他们这样的话比较环保，可以回收。Well, she said these towels are actually prepared for these volunteers who offer their can to release these sturgeons into the Yangtze River for them to dry their hands. And also these towels are recycled after use. And also, they don't want volunteers and other people to make the water not that Well, as you can see here on this releasing spot in the city of Yichang, local workers have still been transporting these Chinese sturgeons one by one to these pools here. And because these Chinese sturgeons are actually quite heavy, so every time when they slip into the water here, it always make a big stirring of the water here. As you can see, always make the water spill out. And it's really interesting to observe these fishes here in the water. They are actually swimming quite elegantly. Now you may ask why we are doing this, why we are releasing many of these Chinese sturgeons into the Yangtze River. Well, actually in the 1970s, the Yangtze River had around 10,000 Chinese sturgeons back at that time. But when it came to the 1980s, after the construction of the Gezhou Dam over the Yangtze River, things greatly changed. A major impact on the life mode of the Chinese sturgeon is that this new dam actually blocked these sturgeons from laying eggs in further upstream along the Yangtze River. And also the overfishing and pollution made things worse for these rare fishes to live. So the number of Chinese sturgeons after 1980s have plunged to only around 50 in 2010. And now some scientists said Chinese sturgeons are nearly extinct in the Yangtze River. So that is why we are making so many efforts to make all out efforts to protect these rare fishes and trying to rebuild a wild species in the Yangtze River. Well, some may blame the dam for making things worse for the fishes. But as I have talked to some local residents, they told me that they still believe the dam has been helpful to provide sufficient electricity for the local economic development, and also have been able to control the water volume, and therefore to prevent many natural floods which threat the lives of many local residents living along the Yangtze River. So that's the kind of two sides of the same coin. However, the good news is that China has been trying to protect rare fishes like the Chinese sturgeons. So far, China has built up 3 protection areas in the country. One is in the city of Yichang, that's where we are right now, and the other 2 are in Shanghai and in the city of Dongtai in East China's Jiangsu province. Another great news is from China's Ministry of Agriculture. They announced that all the natural reserves along the Yangtze River have to start a closing season for fishing in this year, 2018. And as a matter of fact, so far, over 300 natural reserves along the Yangtze River already have started a closing season for fishing, trying to stop any bad behaviors towards the protection of the animals living in the water. And now we can hear that the opening ceremony of the release has kicked off, and I'd like to tell you more about today's event. There will be nearly 1,000 people from all walks of life attending this morning's release. And also, the 500 Chinese sturgeons that will be released this morning are all artificially bred fishes. So that leads to the technological breakthroughs that were achieved by our Chinese scientists in the Chinese Sturgeon Research Institution here. Oh, sorry, it should be, the correct name should be Chinese Sturgeons Research Institute. Actually, this Chinese Sturgeon Research Institute was built in the 1980s in order to protect all the rare fishes that have been affected by the constructions of several dams over the Yangtze River. And one big problem of the protection is that the artificial reproduction was really difficult at first for Chinese scientists. It has been a world difficulty. But in recent years, Chinese scientists have made many technological breakthroughs, and they have successfully reproduced the second filial generation Chinese sturgeons, and which is considered to be more effective to help build the wild species in the Yangtze River. And what's amazing about the Chinese sturgeons is that these fishes, this is really unbelievable. They can just see things in the first week after they are born, and then they become all blind. But they can still survive through all the millions of years in the Yangtze River, as well as in the ocean. And also they can always find the exact position of the entrance of the Yangtze River to swim back to the river and lay their eggs to complete reproduction. And what's more special is that it takes a year for them to swim back to the place where they lay their eggs, but they don't eat anything. They just keep swimming to finish the reproduction mission. And these Chinese sturgeons, after they are released into the Yangtze River, they are supposed to stay in the Yangtze River for a while to get used to the wild environment, and then they will swim along the Yangtze River down to the ocean. And in the ocean, they will grow several years to reach sexual maturity. It often takes around 10 years for a fish egg to grow into a sexually mature fish which are able to reproduce. And then they will swim back to the upstream of the Yangtze River to lay their eggs. But unfortunately, in recent years, many scientists say they rarely found the eggs laid by the Gezhou Dam. As I mentioned before, the Gezhou Dam actually blocked these Chinese sturgeons from laying their eggs in further upstream, and this is the major reason why the number of Chinese sturgeons have been decreasing so rapidly. But after the dam was built, scientists say these sturgeons have been actually trying to get to know the new environment, well, which is the dam. They finally recognize this. They finally realize that they can lay their eggs at the side of the dam. So hopefully, this morning, the 500 Chinese sturgeons, after they release to the Yangtze River, they will finally lay some eggs and reproduce more small fishes of its species. Well, I guess this is so much for my small part in today's ongoing live streaming report this morning. And now I will give time to my Mandarin colleagues in different locations that relate to the Chinese sturgeons, and they will give you more information on the release of this animal, this rare fish, and also they will tell you more on the research and protection of the Chinese sturgeons later. So stay tuned.
获得的受精卵呢，因为这个它是纯性卵，具有粘性，所以说我们在孵化之前呢，需要对这个卵进行一个脱粘。The
fertilized eggs will be sticky at first, and that's why we have to make it less sticky before we put them into the hatching ground. I can see that this looks like an operation table. So what is this used for? So the fish will be put on the operation table for us to collect the eggs and sperms. So this is where we collect the eggs and the sperms. So they can be used for Chinese sturgeons of all sizes and lengths. So now where are we going to hatch the Chinese sturgeons after the fertilization and the desticking of the fertilized eggs? It's quite interesting. Chinese sturgeons live in the water, but are the eggs sensitive to water? They're not sensitive to water, but we have to make sure that the eggs are not in contact with water. Otherwise, they will be activated and they will become useless. So we have to put it into artificially controlled conditions. So let's see under what conditions and in what environment are these eggs hatched. So let's take a look at the hatching factory, going through this little corridor. So this is the hatching place for the eggs. We see rows of hatching equipments, and all the fertilized eggs will be hatched in this place. So how does it work? And the fertilized eggs will be put into the hatching chamber, and it should happen in an environment where there is a certain flow of water. So that's why we're using this equipment to create a condition where the temperature is suitable and there is a flow of water. It's a simulation of the natural environment. So they're using gravity force to swing back and forth. It is a process for us to disperse the fertilized eggs. Otherwise, they will become bad in this process. And so after hatching, what will happen? So let's take a look at the next stage. Following different stages of cell division, and the fertilized eggs will morph into a fry. So this is where the sturgeon fry is cultured and cultivated. So just now we talked about the fertilized eggs. After hatching, we call the small baby fish fry. After some time of growth, they will be able to eat food, and then it's a mouth opening stage. And they can also get energy from their own body. That's the short stage of their growth cycle. And then we will feed them multiple times every day. But each time we shouldn't feed them too much. Otherwise, the water will be contaminated, causing some impact on the health of the sturgeons. So I can see that it's around 20 cultivation tanks. So how old are these fries?
Yes, the fries we're watching now is we started from last year. They're the second generation. Right, they're already 4 months old. They already finished their mouth opening stage. Right now they become the juveniles already. So when they've reached around 5 to 8 centimeters, we will change the feedings. So why we need to do that? Because before we feed them the earthworms that's already not really fulfill their growth requirement, so we need to upgrade their food, and we don't want the Chinese sturgeons to cause any illness, so we also need to let them be healthier and increase their body strength. So we change their food to fulfill their growth needs. So as we know, the whole journeys, especially for the captive bred, that's a very complicated process. We need to really think in details, especially the food part. Right now we are looking at the Chinese sturgeons that was 4 months old, and with the fries growing larger and better, the staffs did their contributions to make the Chinese sturgeons healthier and bigger. So look at the whole process. Let's look at the daily routines here for the Chinese sturgeons research institutes, what kind of job we need to perform. Regarding your questions, that's about our daily management job. So this is a very large captive base that's regarding several regions. So for each region, we have different Chinese sturgeons in different life span, that they have different in size, in ages. So the corresponding management styles are quite different. But there are also some commonalities. First, we have to feed the Chinese sturgeons every day. But talking about the food, especially the different types and quantities, that's also varied. And we also need to clean up their house. So we need to clean up the waste in waters in order not to pollute the water, pollute their environment. And we also need to monitor live the quality of water, because water to Chinese sturgeons like the air to the human being. So if the air is polluted, then that may cause the bad impact to the human beings. The same to the Chinese sturgeons. If water is polluted, then the possibility of getting yield is much higher. Another job for us to perform every day is after we feed the Chinese sturgeons, we need to monitor the condition they swimming and also the facilitations here. So from their moves, we can tell whether they're in a healthy condition, and also we can tell whether they eat enough or they overbat, or it is not enough food for them. And we also need to monitor live the temperature of water, because temperature is also another important factor. The temperature they favor is around 13 to 15 degrees Celsius, and for the room temperatures, we control around 22 degrees Celsius. So depend on the different temperatures, we also give them a different food. So if we want them to grow faster, we will feed them more. So through your introductions, we can tell there are a lot of jobs on your list. I can tell you're really determined and made a lot of great contribution. One important job is to clean up their house. So we can tell that this how you do the cleanup job. Can we see the facilitation? Talking about house cleanup. It's for the large articles of waste. We need to get them out. So this is the circulated water system. So we want to make the water clean and enabling for the Chinese sturgeons to live. For the flowing water, we also do the clean up job. The purpose of doing this is we want the water in the pool or in the pond is circulated, so the water is always clean and good for the Chinese sturgeons. So right now the sturgeons we look at is also the second generation. When we talk about the release, because for right now the Chinese sturgeons, they are born and grows in the captive environment. So before the release, what we need to do to let them get used to the wild or the natural environment. So before we release them, we will give them the training regarding the wild natural environment. So look at the environment right now is quite different. There's no big wave. The flow of the water is tranquil and not really big change. But when we put them in the natural environment, the flow of water actually is around 1 meter. That's a big difference. So that's gave a higher requirement to the Chinese sturgeons. They need to strengthen their swimming capabilities, a way of capturing food. So these are all our training program. So we need to first let them to change their food style. So right now what they're eating is made up by ourselves, made by the institute. So we need to change their food first, let them get used to the wild environment, so that something they can find in the wild environment. And we also need to let them strengthen their swimming skills. And through the live food feeding, we need to also let them to learn how to catch food by themselves. I can tell we have claimed some success in these areas. Talking about what kind of the food you feed the Chinese sturgeons. At the beginning, we gave them the freshwater fish stocks. And later on, we gave them the salt water or the seawater fishes and the live freshwater fishes. We have a lot of viewers watching our live stream, and they're asking exactly the time when we're doing the release job. The time will start or the ceremony will kick off at 9:40 a.m. So that's around 15 minutes from now. We're right now at the Institute of the Chinese Sturgeons. We'll give you more insights about the whole life cycle, especially before the release, how the Chinese sturgeons live and grow. We also especially look into the details about the captive bride process. In Yangtze River, Chinese sturgeon are the key protected species. It's also our top-level protected species in China. In order to protect the diversification of the Yangtze River species, the institute here is making a very important job to reach the goal. Right now, we have around 15 minutes before the ceremony. Let's look at the live signal here from the ceremony. Let's look at how they prepare for the release. To all the viewers, we're very close to the ceremony, and there is the 500 Chinese sturgeons waiting to be released. We have 2 Chinese sturgeons here. So this is the release point. And we also have the boat here. We will monitoring the whole process. So we can tell from the bags, they have their names on it, and they also have the yellow mark at the tail fin. So from the mark, we can tell exactly whether they are the wild creature or the captive species. And this is also their ID, so we can tell exactly which year they were born. And you can find more heavier and bigger ones here. And here we go. This is very big one. I believe this is the biggest one. Over 50 kilograms. And this is the mouth. For the Chinese sturgeons, actually, it's very gentle. So you can tell their mouth is under its jaw. It's not very aggressive like the shark. And look at their eyes. Very small. So after they were born, 7 days, their SAT actually is 0. Their eyesight is 0. So this is the largest one, and they are prepared for the release job. And this is the ceremony venue, and we have 5 big platforms. This is the release platform. So through here, the Chinese sturgeons will go to the river. So we can tell here we have 3 Chinese sturgeons, about 9 years old. This time the youngest is around 7 years old and the oldest is around 9 years old. For Chinese sturgeons, we tell it's very nice and gentle, and working staffs move them, and they are very cooperative, not really aggressive. So we know like the coexistence with the dinosaurs, and we believe they already exist for more than 140 million years. And this is the release ceremony venue, and we have the people here getting ready. And through these 3 platforms, the Chinese sturgeons will be released into the river. And through 11 days to 1 month, the Chinese sturgeons will swim to the Yangtze River. After they reach the Yangtze River, and at the border side between the river and the seawater, they will get used to the environment, and then they will go to the sea. In Shanghai, there is an institute. They had an experiment, and they put the electronic labels on the Chinese sturgeon. And through the whole monitoring system, the Chinese sturgeons were found in the Japanese Sea or South China Sea. And the ceremony is about to kick off. A countdown in 3, 2, 1. The release is about to start. We can see the first Chinese sturgeons is already in the water. The biggest Chinese sturgeons right now is in the sea, in the river. You can tell. You can see this is a very big one. So From our life cycle, this is quite the larger one. I believe that's around 150 to 160 centimeters in length. And this time we basically focus on the male tiny sturgeons because based on our historical record, there are more female sturgeons in the river.
So this is aimed at replenishing the wild population to increase their reproductivity and propagation capabilities in the wild.
中华鲟此次中华鲟放完以后，它会在现场稍事适应后就开始往下游游。
After the release of these Chinese sturgeons, they will swim downstream. And in the downstream sections of the river, we have set up some observational points to record the data. Now it's released into the river. And they will swim around here for a few minutes. So we see a lot of journalists taking photos. Another one, it's quite huge. You can see the tail fins and there are markings on these captive bred Chinese sturgeons. You can see the eyes of these sturgeons. They can only see things 7 days after their birth, and afterwards they will lose their eyesight. And they swim based on the flow of the water. And the Chinese sturgeon is called the patriotic fish because of its Chinese name, 中华鲟. And because they will swim back upstream into the Yangtze River, so another 2 sturgeons into the river. So the smaller one is very vibrant. You can see that this smaller one is very eager to swim into the river, and it is rolling around in the pond. This new one is much smaller than the previous one, and this is a 7-year-old, and the previous one is a 9-year-old. And these are purely captive bred. And we used to breed sturgeons using the wild sturgeons, but this time the 500 sturgeons are purely captive bred. And the parents are also captive bred. And the first generation ones in the past were the wild sturgeons. So this time they're purely captive bred. And this is highly significant for the protection and conservation of this species. So they are very eager to get into the water, and the nose, the eyes. Okay, you can see that they're now once again flowing into the water, 2 at the same time. We can see that there are 2 vessels out there they're using radar technology to observe the sonar signal of these Chinese sturgeons released into the wild. The swimming habits and the conditions in the water. And later on, another colleague will introduce to you the specifics. Well, the sturgeons were transported from the research institute early in the morning today, and from the institute to the releasing point, it's around half an hour drive distance. We can also see some clips of how they were actually loading these sturgeons onto the vehicles to be transported to the releasing ground. Well, this is the sixth release of the Chinese sturgeons, and every year we have a lot of volunteers pitching in to help with the release. Some students from the schools and universities. We can actually talk with some of the students and volunteers here and see how much they know about the Chinese sturgeons. Hello? Have you seen Chinese sturgeons before? No? What is your impression of the Chinese sturgeon? They're very gentle. Have you heard of the sturgeon before? Actually, we have seen this at the Chaoyuan water town. We released some of these sturgeons before at the water town. This is a smaller one. These are the markings. So there are a lot of kids. They can see firsthand how these sturgeons are released into the wild, and they will help raise the awareness of conservation of these sturgeons. Are you a volunteer? So you come here every year? This is the first time. We used to know nothing about the Chinese sturgeons, and this time a friend of mine told me that we can actually have this experience, and I want to bring my kids here to have some experience because they have never seen the sturgeons except from TV. What is your impression? Is it scary? No? What is your impression of the Chinese sturgeons? It is huge.
现在这个我们可以看到，这个在现场有好多学生，包括志愿者
Now
在
we can see that there are a lot of students and volunteers here helping with the release. By having a first-hand experience with the Chinese sturgeon, we can have a lot of knowledge about the conservation of this very ancient creature. Now, Professor Liang, could you please talk about the research and investigation of the conservation of the Chinese sturgeon? And also the changes in the Yangtze River delta. I'm not a professor, just to be clear. I'm from water and environment remediation organization. I have been involved in this kind of release work multiple times. I'm not actually clear how many times, but a lot of times. And I was deeply involved in some of the activities and events because we want to maintain a general balance between man and nature, and human beings are part of nature, and we coexist with each other in this natural environment. So we have already conducted 60 releases of Chinese sturgeons in the past years, and this release has drawn a lot of media attention. We are very proud of what we have done. We're very honored. That makes what we have been doing meaningful. So from the first release to today, what kind of changes have you seen? So the biggest changes are in the involvement and participation of the general public, and the attention from the government is also increasing, and these are two very obvious changes over the years. You can see that some primary school students are involved. We can have on-site discussions and communications, so people have a greater awareness of the conservation efforts. So can you talk about the research in the Chinese sturgeons? Because we are from environmental NGO, and we are very grateful for the research work done by the Chinese Sturgeon Research Institutes and the similar institutes. They're elevating this work from a very low level to a very high level. So it effectively relieves the replacement level and pressure of the Chinese sturgeons in the wild. And this will make it easier for the captive bred sturgeons to mingle and reproduce with the wild sturgeons. From very smaller baby sturgeons to fries to juveniles and to adults, and we are seeing a lot of changes. So we have different grades of different stages of Chinese sturgeons being released into the wild, and they can spawn. Some of them are already sexually mature, from 8 to 11 years. So this time we're releasing 7-year-olds to 9-year-olds. It's a little bit different in terms of different sexes, the females and males, and this will effectively relieve the pressure on the wild population.
So we do the release job in a more scientific way, so that's better protect the ecosystem in Yangtze River. Thank you so much. So we can see there are a lot of kids and volunteers are doing the releasing work. Later on, we will interview Mr. Cao, Professor Cao, to give our viewers the biodiversity in the Yangtze River and conservation program. you can tell that today's ceremony is covered by many media outlets, and we also have the schools organize the events here.
我们再来看看这个鱼，现在可能大鱼我们放的差不多了，我们在这个池子里看到还有一些小的中华鱼。
So I believe the biggest ones already be released, and the smaller ones is waiting in the line. And a lot of volunteers and also the students are participating in the ceremony, and they will get more understanding and knowledge about the Chinese sturgeons and biodiversity. I believe this is the next one to be released. So also volunteers? Yes. Where are you from? From Wuhan province. And how did you know about this event? Actually, this is my third time to participate. I already participated for 2 times before. It's very meaningful. It teaches me that for the critical endangered Chinese sturgeons need to be better protected. I believe that every single one should pay our contribution to protect Chinese sturgeons and other endangered species. And although today's weather is not really favorable, but that's not really impact our passion and enthusiasms, because we're very proud of ourselves because we're doing something very meaningful. You can tell we have a lot of volunteers from Wuhan, from Yichang. They are helping the institute to release the Chinese sturgeons. So from this platform, the Chinese sturgeons will swim into the Yangtze River, and there is a small boat. My colleague Guan Meilu is on the boat, on the ship, to do the monitoring job, and she with the staffs to conduct the monitoring and recording jobs to exactly the life of Chinese sturgeons after release. My colleague Guan Meilu will tell you more in details about the monitoring job. Right now, we're already about 30 minutes of the release, and let's talk about right now the monitoring job, what's going on there. So we're at the monitoring boat, and hope we're lucky enough can get the Chinese sturgeons flying up in the air. And about the last 10 minutes, we can tell we already saw around 3 or 4 Chinese sturgeons. So we have this staff is keeping releasing the Chinese sturgeons into the river, into this water, and from this angle you can see the whole picture of the ceremony. With these years' efforts to better protect the Chinese sturgeons, a lot of institute and people involved in this regard. For this boat, actually just the fishing boat, but every year when we have this ceremony, the monitoring staffs will put all the equipment here to monitoring the activities and the moves under the sea of Chinese sturgeons. It's near to the FBI monitoring levels and standards. The monitoring information, we're monitoring fishes. Let's look at the magic institutes. Actually, this boat is really, really small ones, very tiny. And the working area is quite narrow. It's very small. And let's look at the equipments. And this is a radar system. Right, what you are doing now? We use this sonar system to monitor the Chinese sturgeons under the sea. This equipment can tell the live pictures about the situation going on under the sea, about the fishes, about the water waves, about the float. And this is a convergent machine, and we also have the cameras to take the live pictures under the sea. And we also put the marks or the signals on the Chinese sturgeons. So this is the 3D pictures. So the top one is the surface and the bottom one is the underwater. For this is the depth around 10 meters. And we can get the information as deep as 20 meters. That we can cover the area around 10 to 20 meters in depth under the sea. I can tell, here we go, we have Chinese sturgeons here coming into our scope and swimming, and we can tell, can capture the exact move. So this is a very precious research information record. So we can give you exactly the moves or the live pictures of the Chinese sturgeons, but through the radar technology, we can give you the more information and insights. So let's wait to see whether we're lucky enough to see another one into our scope. It depends on our luck. So within the 15 meters to the radar system, we all can capture them. Still, in the end, depend on whether we're lucky enough or not. Because before we spent several days, but only monitored 1 Chinese sturgeon. But right now, we release 500 Chinese sturgeons. I believe the possibility is much higher. Yes, we hope we can see more. What kind of technology is helping us? It's like the radars. Right now we're using the sonar reflective technologies. So we send the signals in the water, and if so the probe is send out the signal, and if it touches the objectives, that will convert the signal back, and we collect the signals, and through this convergent machine we can capture the image. And I heard the sound. I believe there's another group of Chinese sturgeons is now being released. This is another one Chinese sturgeon. As you can see, is swimming. So the string, actually that's a string of our anchor. let's wait. I believe the possibility of seeing another Chinese sturgeon in our scope is very high. Right now, this time it's a Chinese sturgeon is a captive bred. So we're also a little worried and concerned whether they can get used to the environment. And I believe they also need to give them some time to let them get ready to the new environment, because they need to get used to where they are, because this is something new. And then they will swim into the Yangtze River. So they will do the circling to identify where they are. And the staff telling us there will be another lucky one into our scope. Actually, this is a very clear image. We can see exactly the shape, the move. What about the right light? Why is it keeping shining? It's because it's keeping recording. That's not really depends wholly automatically. You still need the staff to do the monitoring job. And we also put different marks. I believe there are more, about to 4 different types of marks. And we put I believe the barcode or QR code on the tail fin of the Chinese sturgeons that help us to get the information and data. But for this one, what kind of the technology we put into the Chinese sturgeons? Actually, our equipment can observe a captive bred Chinese sturgeons and wild Chinese sturgeons. So this is, you think like a camera we put under the sea, and any Chinese sturgeons that swim in front of our camera, we can capture them. So let's be a little bit patient. Is there another one? Do you have any previous records so we can show to our viewers, like the information or the record or the image? Because this really need a lot of efforts. We need to staring at the screen all the time. So I believe you can see the swimming in, the tail, the head. And so the size is quite big. So let's look at the live picture. So I explain to you, so right now we have another staff outside to see the sonar signals. So we can see there's another one. We can see them. And we also can measure the land at around 180 centimeter in land. So you can see we can monitor the signal, we can do the screenshot, and measure the length of the Chinese sturgeons. And the shadow is also the Chinese sturgeons. We can tell from the tail fin, it's moving. Because the Chinese sturgeons, actually, their size is quite big, so it's easier for us to capture the signal.
So if we stop here, how do we measure the length? So let's open another file. military defense sites and also a Syrian Scientific Research Institute were all attacked. The Syrian side said that 13 missiles were intercepted, but we have no idea